we made these realizations and observations and figured out that it was okay to change the valve setting on your shower and leave it for the rest of time.
Yep.
To us, that's like, oh, big friggin' deal. To this person, they're dealing with it now for the first time.
Right. They've never had to move that handle before.
Yo, 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 yo. Welcome for tuning in to the Make Trades Great Again podcast.
DJ Eric, Jazzy Jeff.
DJ Andy.
Maybe we need air horns.
I'm full of it.
I think we need air horns.
Yeah, we know. That's like my favorite stupid comedic.
Yeah.
Dumb. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I was listening to the Wives episodes. We're recording this a few weeks before it goes out. So
yeah.
A few weeks ago, we had the Wives join us for 2 episodes. And honestly, it was exciting. It was exciting for us for obvious reasons. We've been on them to kind of join us and have fun. And we thought it would be fun and everything. Turns out it was totally cool.
It was cool. We've got good feedback on it. You know, we've had people that are like, hey, you know, good to hear. We're a husband and wife team. I've had a few of those, you know, that have chimed in and like, hey, we're a husband and wife team, have been for 25 years. And you guys, you're not alone. No.
Well, we talked about a lot of stuff in those 2 episodes. If you haven't already, check them out. They're audio only. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to get to watch those episodes. But they are on the YouTube, like radio, whatever that is. So like you could still get it on YouTube if you're a fan of the podcast on YouTube. So at the Mechanical Hub channel. Anyway, so the other day we talked about a lot of stuff in those episodes, and one of them kind of came up and was a little more fresh. As I listened to it on the podcast, it was happening in real life. And what it was just that support aspect of having your spouse really being your main kind of, well, in my case, the only other person in the business, right?
Right.
And so I needed some parts, and I asked Heather to help me out because she could tell when she was talking to me. She's like, "How's the job going?" And I had a moment. I'm not gonna lie. It wasn't super, I was a little dramatic, but I wasn't like mean or anything like that. But I was just like, I was feeling a little sorry for myself in a sense where I was actually, I don't know if sorry for myself is the right term. I was freaking out initially when I got to a job that I'd looked at weeks prior. Right. I visited the site. I had photos. I had all my material ordered, sold the job, and I was replacing a big 50-gallon like high performance power vent water heater that was being used for domestic water and space heating.
Gotcha.
And I was replacing it with a combi boiler in this tiny little spot. So small and so convoluted in how it was built as this closet that was, it was terrible. It was a terrible spot. And I didn't ahead of time take into full consideration like how I was going to make this boiler
fit.
First and foremost, fit, but even hang on the wall.
Right.
I'm not kidding you. I was starting to panic when I first got there, and she asked me, "How's it going?" And I was like, I shouldn't have taken this job. I'm not gonna make any money. But I'm just like,
and then you're, okay. I hear where you're going.
I'm like 2 hours into this job only, so like I'm panicking.
Right. Yeah, you're like,
you know what I mean?
I'd rather be somewhere else.
Yeah, I say that because like the intensity of it, like for this to be happening at like hour 1 and 2, like that's not good. Right? I could see like at the end of the first day be like, oh my gosh, this job, am I going to finish it? I was starting the job going, oh my gosh, should I have taken it? So anyway, it was funny. I was listening. Well, it's funny now. In the moment I was sweating bullets. Yeah. In a little bit. I handled the pressure pretty well, but like she got on the phone. She was asking me some questions, and I didn't like unload on her. I just told her like, I'm not having a good day. I'm not sure this day is going to end well. Yeah. I'm not sure what time of day it's going to be when it ends, that kind of thing. And she listened and she's like, well, I hope it goes well. bye. She's like, I'm not going to, like, I don't think me talking to you is going to make this any better.
Can I bring you some Kleenex?
Yeah, well, there's that. So then later that day, I had called and asked her for some parts. It turns out I was able to do without the parts that day. I go home. It was a longer day, but not, I mean, actually it wasn't as long as I thought. The day ended up going better than I thought.
Yeah.
But it was a little longer. It was one of those, first day boiler changeouts where you're like, do I work till 4 or do I work till 5? Like, there's, cutting out early is not going to help anything. I'd rather tomorrow be a little shorter, today be a little longer. And then you have on top of that, on that first day, you have that haul away the old tank and all the piping and all the crap you tore out, right? And so that's a little bit of a, it's a good 45 minutes to an hour of just,
it's extra
cleanup
stuff
at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah. And so then I kind of decide, okay, load up the van. It's time to go. It's like 4:30. I get out of there, and the first thing I do is I call her, check in, and we're like, hey, today went better than I thought.
Yeah.
If I was crabby earlier, didn't mean to be. That kind of conversation. And then she says, well, what are you doing? First of all, it looks like traffic. I got an hour to get home, to get to town, basically, from where I'm at.
Right.
And I'm not even going to the shop. I'm going straight to the scrapyard, right?
Right.
So I get to the scrapyard to dump the water heater, and this dude comes up to me. And he's like sitting there. I'm like, dude, they're closed. Like, why are you sitting here? It looks like he's waiting with a trailer full of aluminum cans.
Right.
And he's like, can you help me unload my trailer? I'm like, nope. No, I can't help you unload your trailer. It's like, no, I'm going to leave it here. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you leave your trailer? And then he's like, oh, it's a fundraiser thing. We would do it all the time. I'm like, okay, sure. Older guy, help him unload it. What do? I freaking smashed my toe. The trailer, the jack,
doesn't function.
It's like one of those pivoting jacks.
Yeah.
And it wasn't locked in. The tongue of the trailer goes down on top of my foot. And I'm wearing safety shoes, but it hits the top of not my toe, but the top of my foot before it hits the toe. And I'm like, oh. So then I'm like, okay, this is what you get for thinking your day was going to go better than it, day went better than I thought, No, you get to smash your foot with a aluminum can trailer for the local wrestling team or whatever the heck it was.
Right. Being a good Samaritan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said no, I should have stuck to it, but name's on the side of the van, so this guy's gonna walk away thinking that guy's a D-bag.
That guy's an a-hole.
Well, he's older too, so it's the only reason I did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He needed help. He asked for it, so I helped him. I get home, everything's fine. I kind of unload the van, and I always have a list of what I need to make sure for the next day. And because it's those things that you just didn't anticipate or you didn't realize weren't in stock on your van, that kind of thing. And you know what I ran out of was threaded rod. And I don't use a lot of threaded rod, but it's not an anomaly at all.
Yeah.
It shows up on my jobs.
Yeah.
But it's, inches at a time.
Right.
And, but those inches add up to feet, and those feet add up to whole sticks, and I was out.
Yeah.
And I usually have 3-4 6-footers on the van. They're not expensive.
Right.
And I've got them in a place where they stay protected and clean, and they're out of the way.
Yeah.
But I had to stock up some stuff like that. I was putting some threaded rod on the van, and I took this box off that was all the garbage from the day before or that day, right? Well, except it wasn't just garbage. It had some parts in it and everything, but I didn't figure that out until the next day. That's when I had to have Heather come and bring me something. So I get to the job next morning. We had recorded that morning.
Yeah.
Get out there. I got to wire up a pump. I got to wire up a thermostat and an outdoor sensor, gas line, start this thing up.
Yeah.
I got the thing filling while I'm doing all this, and I'm about ready to wire the pump, and I go, oh, I don't have the parts for the pump. Because these pumps now have these little connections inside the box, right? It's not just a couple wires anymore. It's like a plug that you have to wire to that is proprietary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was in the box with the parts. that was in the shop because I'm like, I don't need this on the van anymore. That kind of thing. And then, now I'm an hour away. And it's just a long story.
Yeah.
I'm 10 minutes into this story. And it's like, I was listening to that podcast and I realized like how we depend on each other and each one of us has our role. And here I am like, can you bring me parts? I screwed up. Can you go out to the shop, FaceTime me? We got to make sure we get the, you know what I mean? Not a totally crazy thing. It happens throughout the year, here and there.
Yep.
It'd be nice if I had an employee to do that. You know what I mean? Like I would have just had an employee run over to Good and buy a new pump because I'll use the pump and just pull the part out of it. But I need to stay on the job. I need to keep going, and running to get a pump isn't going to help me.
Right.
So and Heather was willing. It was totally cool. She's like, yeah, no problem. I mean, I'm sure she would have loved to not have to drive over to my job with a little baggie of,
there you go,
$3 worth of parts in it. But it's just funny how things like that go. The job was fine in the end.
Right.
I did find myself up again. I put myself up, kind of backed myself into a corner a little bit.
Okay.
Like we've talked about this in the past too, how we have to set the expectations for our customers.
Yeah.
Like performance of equipment, what the job's going to entail. So ahead of time, I had in my proposal for the job very clearly, and while I was on site, I brought it up before they got the proposal, that they aren't going to have hot water during the job. And at times they're not going to have cold water.
Yep.
But we'll limit the cold water thing, and that'll be less of an inconvenience than, trust me, not having hot water is going to be a pain in your butt.
Yep.
I even go as far as oftentimes telling people like, hey, if you want to take off for, vacation or something, or if you got something planned, do you want me to do it while you're gone? That kind of thing.
Right.
Some people take you up on that. But this time I could tell they were stressed when I got there the second day to finish everything up. I could tell they were stressed that they didn't have hot water because the first thing they talked about was, so before you leave, the water's going to be hot, it's going to be hot water's going to be back on again and stuff. And it's like, yes, of course. We had a nice conversation about it, but I could just tell, I had set that expectation, or at least I thought they understood it. And I think that they did understand it. They just were annoyed that they didn't have hot water, which I told them they would be. But the going back into backing myself into a corner, this is a combi boiler.
Yeah.
As you know, Andy, as my close personal friend, not my favorite appliance to install.
Right.
For a lot
regardless
of
of manufacturer.
Regardless of who makes it. It has nothing to do with who makes it. I'm not biased against them. I just think that there are better ways of achieving the same outcome in the end.
I do too.
I think adding a water heater is better than having a single appliance do both things in that way that a combi boiler does it. And why I say that? Well, we were a little underwhelmed by the performance. And I'm like, underwhelmed? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? And I said, was it not hot enough? Because I had left it at the factory setting.
122
right?
or whatever,
Yeah. This is this is after I had finished this, but there's a whole nother reason why we're having this conversation. I kind of skipped over that. I'm sorry.
That's right.
There was a problem with the boiler.
Yep.
I had to get a part. They overnighted it to me.
Right.
Which I was surprised, in order to connect this thing to the internet.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it worked. Okay.
Right.
So when I did leave the second day, they had hot water.
Right.
I kind of skipped over that. I'm sorry. Chronologically, that story was going to make no sense because all of a sudden I jumped to them having hot water when I was just talking about them not having it.
Right.
Anyway, I go back with this part that they had overnighted me, and that's when we have this conversation, and it kind of put me back on the conversations you and I have had about this on the podcast about setting expectations and things like that. They had gone from a tank to what is essentially a tankless.
Yep.
And they said, well, it takes a little longer for the water to get to the kitchen sink. And I'm like, well, yes. However, not much longer. It really couldn't possibly be that. Maybe like 5 to 10 seconds. Yeah. 5 seconds maybe.
Right.
I mean, quite literally you have to run. That's the farthest sink. It's the it's the farthest outlet. It's 1/2-inch piping through a slide. Like, it's just not going to happen fast. Right. But I said, yeah, it's, we've talked about this. It's like, it's not going to perform exactly like it did before. Every time you want hot water, or it will not run until each time you want hot water. Like, it's not sitting there waiting for you to like deliver you hot water. It's not recirculating or anything like that. It's not going to turn on until you turn a faucet on. I can tell you it won't shut off either until you shut that faucet off. So like, there's a difference between this and the tank as well, to where it will keep up with you until you no longer demand service from it. But that was a brief conversation. Then he said, well, we're underwhelmed by like, it just seemed like we had to position the handle on the shower different. You ever had this conversation?
Right. Yeah.
We had to turn the dial on the shower to a different spot than we're used to. What do you say to that? I'm curious, actually. I've been talking this whole time. I'm so sorry.
Tiny violin. Like,
so like, yeah, my response was as well, I mean, it's not maybe the same temperature as it was before, or just in how it operates, like that doesn't change. I said, does it get hot enough? And they're like, oh yeah, it gets hot enough. Could be a little hotter. I'm like, okay. But why do you think it needs a little hotter? If you go to the sink and turn on full hot, and once it's hot, is it too hot to hold your hand under? Yeah, I guess it would be. And then, well, why then would you want it hotter?
Right. Well, it's not
like if you can't have full hot on and hold your hand under it, then to me, that's even, we could start talking about it being too hot.
Yes.
Right. So my answer to his, we position the shower handle in a different, because they have one of those deltas with the temperature control knob separate from volume.
Okay. Then,
right. So you understand what I'm saying, right? So you turn it on and whatever it was set at last time, if that was good for you then, it's going to be good for you now. That's how that works. Yeah.
So theoretically, it was a one-time adjustment.
That's what I had to tell him. I'm like, so you have to reposition it because it's just not the same as your water heater was before.
Right. Okay.
And then you'll never have to change it. Just put it where you like it and leave it. And I think just trying to explain those things nicely and professionally too, by the way. It puts you, it reminds me of those conversations you and I have had about those expectations, about just talking with your client. And we understand this stuff inside and out. I mean, we'd like to say we're the best at it, right?
Sure.
But when, we're not thinking about the fact that we had to learn this along the way. Right. And along the way, we made these realizations and observations and figured out that it was okay to change the valve setting on your shower and leave it for the rest of time.
Yep.
To us, that's like, oh, big friggin' deal. To this person, they're dealing with it now for the first time.
Right. They've never had to move that handle before.
Correct.
Something must be wrong.
To them, it seems like, yes, exactly. Thank you. To them, it seems like there's something wrong. That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Yeah. That's funny.
So it's up to you then as the pro to communicate that. I'm not going to say I'm the best at it. I would say that I have a talent with talking to people. Heck, people listen to this podcast. I must not be the worst person to listen to.
Right.
But there are people in our field that are not great at that. And I could see why this might be a reason for them to get in their comments on that post on Facebook or whatever and tell you why that appliance sucks. I wonder if it goes as deep as like, they think it sucks because it was different and they don't like to deal with the customer and try to explain why it's different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Am I getting way too deep here?
No, I think I know what you're saying there. I don't know how you can, sometimes you can spell it out like to such infinite detail that I know that the customer does exactly like you and I do when you agree to a software update from Apple. You don't read the terms of agreement, right? You're like, okay, they're going to, whatever, you assume that this is how this is going to work. And the more information you put on your quote, I feel like sometimes they're like boiler installation price, click,
$15,000.
And then they're in the middle. There's this thing like where you need to buy me a Mercedes Benz, and you're gonna pay for my retirement and hire a pool boy for me. Is in the middle of the conversation, in between the boiler replacement and price tag, and nobody read that.
Yeah, yeah.
Know? Like what?
You're not wrong.
So it's funny because I've got a similar one. We're getting ready to start today where, it's in a 4-plex or a 6-plex, I guess. And the guy's like, well, I'm going to have to, get hotel rooms for all my tenants for the night.
Because you can't provide them hot water.
Because you don't have hot water. I'm like, well, I mean, that's up to you. I can't do anything about that. Only thing we can do is try to have hot water on, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be on the first day. Right? Like we could forego doing system piping and just focus on domestic hot water, gas, condensate, vent. Right? There's a possibility we'll have it on, but I can't guarantee.
I mean, I haven't seen the job, but unless there's like a lot, is there anything you can do ahead of time?
Not, I mean,
that's gonna.
We're reusing the indirect, right? So indirect's like 6 years old, so that piping is all done. So I don't have to touch domestic at all, in that aspect.
That's faster then.
Yeah, like I say, it's possible. We're not going to have the heating piping done because there's 8 zone valves and a header to repipe, and controls and all that. So we're just not going to have that done. Going outside of that, I went, yeah, it's possible if you got the room prepped and all this, and I put in my quote, these projects take us 2 to 3 days. It's a generic disclaimer. I'm not going to overpromise and underperform, right? That's not, don't set yourself up that direction. But it is funny though to see how people, what they read versus what they comprehend.
Or how they interpret it. Yeah. Or sometimes people will, it's just the nature in certain people where they will agree to things and then after the fact, maybe be argumentative or present it as if like, they didn't understand it or they understood it to be something different.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly words on a page, I mean, there can be multiple interpretations of things, but if it's worded right, like, look, like I've read your disclaimer.
Right.
It's very similar to my own. In fact, it basically says the same thing with not the exact same words, but I was even thinking about changing mine because I'm, updating a lot of things in my price book and all this kind of stuff. I had asked you for it the other day, remember? Yep. And just so I could see yours too, because it's helpful to see other people's. And maybe yours is way better.
Right.
But it's pretty cut and dry, but again, that's our perspective. Yeah. So we have to draw from these experiences, I think. That's kind of how I try to approach it.
Yeah.
Like I have to think about this job, the interaction I had with that guy, the second day I was there, and then the following day when I was, I got the performance kind of anxiety.
Yeah.
I made some adjustments. First of all, I turned the water temperature up So did you know that they only go up 2 degrees at a time on that control? Did you ever notice that?
It's weird. Like
it's 120, it's 122, it's 124, it's 126. Yeah. It's not 121, 123, 125. It's so weird. Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I hope that they're okay with it. He paid his bill the next day. So that was cool. His fine, the remaining 50%.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what today's episode is about, to be honest with you. I just wanted to kind of tell you that.
Right.
I'm not perfect, and it was so useful to have Heather help me out. And that partnership that we have and that we were talking about and listening to in the episode.
Yep.
And just reminded me again, like, this is important. This is how this business runs.
Right.
And then the reality of the business too. I started out I thought the freaking walls were closing in on me.
Yep.
Right.
I can say this to your thought. It happened. I do it probably weekly. And having an employee doesn't solve that aspect.
Yeah, I know.
Because now, you know what I forget? I forget 3 times as much stuff.
I totally get that.
And
I get that. I'm just saying, just let me have it for this combo. No, I know what you mean, though. I do. I get that. I've been around you enough too to see that me having an employee doesn't make this problem go away at all. In fact, it probably just happens more often.
And I think that's the big thing with me is that I feel like I have gotten better about remembering my own things. So long as I don't get sidetracked when I walk out to the shop in the morning. And that's really easy for me to squirrel into something and be like, ooh, shiny.
I know. You know what we should do? We should start really redefining what it is we offer our customers and services. And I've had this conversation with you privately, but and other people, we would be so much smarter if we just realize what we're really good at and what's really simple and repeatable and wash, rinse, repeat, repeat. Like I would love to bring somebody on and just have that person do water heaters and water softeners and
bait and tackle.
The most basic things.
Right.
I'm saying not even go do faucets and toilets and just do these things just over. And then in the spring, sump pumps, you know what I mean?
I'm thinking I don't know, mid British Virgin Islands, somewhere in there, little beach cabana, banana stand that sells tan and pink crazy Charlie.
Well, there's that.
Bonefish flies. I mean, that's all we're going to go with. That's just, we're going to be really good at bonefish flies.
Yeah, that's what I mean though. We take on a lot, right? Yeah. And we're good at a few specialized things, but those things Mike Ring, my buddy, Ringer, brings it up every time we're together. We work together often. And he's like, that's why I don't do boilers. That's why I don't do hydronics. You guys got to have all these parts and they're all OEM for the equipment.
That's the same.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And it reminds me each time he brings that up is, he does HVAC, he works on furnace and ACs, and it is almost easier in that sense where it's a lot more universal. It's a lot. I mean, it's super technical. It's super important to be, highly qualified work, right? I'm not saying anything other than that. It's just when you compare it to what we're doing, it's so specialized that it's I can't just go drop in and grab a part for this boiler anywhere because it's it's got to be the OEM part. It's got to be, especially as this stuff has got more technical, more equipment, nothing's universal, put it that way. Not anymore.
No.
And so, need to stop worrying about, did I leave that part for that pump someplace? It needs to be do I have a valve for this water heater? Shut off and then pipe and connectors. I just need to simplify.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I probably won't ever do that.
Anyway. How many times the box of parts has screwed me over? Parts should not reside in a box.
I know. I'm We've
convinced.
Talked about that so many times.
It's so much more. It's so much easier if it's in the box, but it's the worst possible thing because you just like you mentioned earlier. I could walk out in the shop right now and grab 5 within a few minutes of random weird box of parts that's got miscellaneous stuff in it.
Yeah.
That needs to be just put away. And you're like, God, I know for a fact that I bought these since.
Well, this particular this pump situation that Heather had to drive out to me, that was 100% my own doing and not a normal scenario.
Yep.
But you know what I did? Like every other job, I took 5 minutes the day before, where I was loading everything up in my van, and I put the flanges on the pump.
Yep.
I don't care if anybody agrees with me. This speeds things up while I'm on the job. It's so much faster for me to already have that done, and it takes so much. Sure. It's so much easier to do it while I'm just in my shop. Works for me. But at that time, I'm like, where's this little plastic bag of crap? What do I do with it? It doesn't really go in the enclosure. You know what I mean? Ahead of time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Didn't think twice, I might leave this in my shop.
Tape that sucker to the barrel of the pump, I guess, from here on out.
That's just it. Stuff like that needs, it's not that big a deal. It's not that hard to figure out, but caused a whole hour one way, 2-hour round trip for my wife to drive me out a, $3 little plastic bag of parts, but whatever. All right, dude.
Cut it.
That's it.
That's it.
I'm going to cut it. Everybody,
random rant.
Please send us your topic ideas.
Yep.
You listen to episodes like this, it's because we haven't heard from you long enough that we need. No, we love hearing from you, and you can text us. One thing about that text line, Andy, you know what I've never brought up is the fact that we can't reply to it.
Right.
In that text streams. Like, you're not going to get a reply from us if you text us.
Yep.
But you will get a reply in an episode. Like, we're going to bring it up that you sent us a message, and oftentimes it fuels the conversation for us, and we do appreciate any feedback you give us. So ratings for the podcast can help. Yep. You can email us at maketradesgreatagain@gmail.com. So you got it right that time. And please send us your feedback. We do really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
Have a good one.
You good?
Yep, I'm good.
All right.